Hey, how you doing? You're probably asking yourself, what's with face paint? Well, it revolves around today's topic. The topic of that being the black metal scene in Sweden and Norway, and about the band Mayhem and their members, Dead and Euronymous, which I'm going to be referring to Dead as his nickname, Pele, the entire video as well. This is actually my second time recording this video because the first time I wasn't recording, unfortunately, and that kind of sucks. Whatever. But I've always been interested about this topic. This has been one of my favorite topics to talk about. I've always thought it was interesting. I've even listened to some of their music, which I've liked a lot. However, researching this video, I talked to my sister and she had this to say about Mayhem. But like I said, this is one of my favorite true crime stories of almost all time. There's a couple more, but this is up there. I've always loved learning about the story and learning about the history of the music scene and all that as well. But without further ado, let's get into the video. Per Jungf, also known as Pelle, was born on January 16th, 1969 in Växjö, Stockholm country, Sweden, to mother Anita Forsberg and father Lars Olin, who divorced soon after his birth. As a child, Pelle suffered from sleep apnea when he was 10 years old, and he suffered from internal bleeding from a ruptured spleen after an ice skating accident. However, in the Swedish metal book Blood El Död, English for Blood, Fire, Death, his brother Anders stated that in an interview that Pelle was frequently bullied in school and one day sustained a ruptured spleen as a direct result of a severe beating by bullies. Because of the injury, Pelle had been rushed to the hospital where he was, for a time, declared clinically dead, which ultimately caused his fascination with the death, even his making his stage name Dead. Within Pelle's teenage year, he started to discover heavy metal and rock music, with many bands influencing him, such as his favorites being Black Sabbath, Kiss, Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, Motorhead, Venom, Metallica, Bathory, Sodom, and Merciful Fates. Wow. I didn't know I had so much in common with this kid. Music wise, you know, we like the same music. This is the kind of music I grew up on. I've always loved these kind of songs, you know, so he's the real one. Shout out a real one. I keep looking behind me for you guys who's wondering. I keep looking behind me because my cats keep making noise. Hold on. This is my cat, Sonora. I don't think she likes being on camera. What do you think? Anyways, continuing with the story, Mayhem was founded in 1984, but it wasn't until early 1986 when Pelle would join them. Before though, Pelle founded a Swedish death metal group named Morbid, which he would record a demo tape for called December Moon. However, he was upset with the progress of the band and decided to start looking for other bands. So he contacted the members of Mayhem, as he was aware the group was looking for a new vocalist as the last member, Maniac, was leaving. According to Mayhem bassist Jorn Necrobutcher Stubbard, which, pause, Necrobutcher is such a cool name. It is such a cool name. I think I gotta think of some of these names for me, you know. Can I name my firstborn child Necrobutcher? Because that would be pretty cool. Anyways, continuing, Pelle sent him a package which contained the demo tape, a letter, and a crucified mouse. Although Necrobutcher lost the package itself, he kept the tape which had Pelle's contact information, and after getting a hold of him and inviting him to a rehearsal, Pelle ended up moving to Norway in early 1988 and became the new official vocalist for Mayhem. During his time in the band, he had some strange practices, one of them being his face paint, as I tried to do, corpse paint. He tried to do corpse paint to look more dead. He even went the extra step of burying his clothes so they looked like they were rotted and gave off a grave scent. Necrobutcher even quoted that it wasn't anything to do with the way Kiss and Alice Cooper used makeup. The Dead actually wanted to look like a corpse. He didn't do it to look cool. And with the band's drummer, Jan Axel Hellhammer, claimed that Pelle was the first to do corpse paint in the black metal scene. Even though Another member, the guitarist Oystein Euronymous Azrath, can be seen wearing corpse paint in live footage as early as 1985, but that's okay. That's okay. Hellhammer's a cool name. I'll believe him. But besides the corpse paint and the dressing like a dead person and smelling like a dead person, Pele had, his fascination with death. One of them being that while touring with Mayhem, he found a dead crow, in which he kept in a bag so he could sniff before performing, so he could sing with the scent of death in his nostrils. Pretty crazy. He even kept dead geese under his bed to be closer with death. Kind of crazy, man. Kind of crazy. Can't relate. Really, can't relate on that one. Yeah, no, can't relate. Anyways, in an interview conducted by Marduk guitarist Morgan Hoxton for the magazine Slayer, Pele explained how he and the rest of Mayhem would expel posers from their concerts. As he recalled the events of one particular show, stating that before we began playing, there was a crowd of about 300 in there. But in the second song, Necrolust, we began to throw around those pig heads. Only 50 were left. If someone doesn't like blood and rotten flesh thrown in their face, they can F off. And that's exactly what they do. So he was pretty good, pretty heavy into the scene, even, getting rid of the posers, doing a war kind of thing. Blood in the concerts and all that. I wouldn't like to be splashed for blood. I'd probably leave. Poser or not, I'd probably leave still. With Pele's fixation on, death and things being dead, he started to get some stranger habits. One of them being that he would self-harm. On February 3rd, 1990, while on stage, he got a hold of a broken bottle and started to self-harm. After the show ended, they had to take him to the hospital, where Faust, the drummer for the band Emperor, claimed that they arrived too late, so it was no use to give him stitches. With him starting to self-harm, became a side depression that not a lot of people knew surrounded him besides his band members and closer friends. He would start to self-harm around his own friends as well, where when obviously they had to subdue him and treat his wounds for him. It caused the demeanor of the band to go down, and a lot of people were starting to get upset with Pele. Understandably so, because this man's kind of just going ham, sitting right across from you. But that wasn't the case for Oystein Azrath, or also known as Euronymous, because he thought that Pele's dark demeanor was good for Mayhem. He thought the negative energy fit Mayhem's image, and he even encouraged Pele to unalive himself. Mannheim said, "I don't know if Oystein did it out of pure evil or if he was just fooling around." By the time 1991 came around, Pele, Euronymous, and Hellhammer were already living with each other in a house in the woods near Krakstad, which is also where they recorded and did rehearsals. According to Hellhammer, Pele just stayed in his room writing letters and drawing. Accordingly, he said that he just sat in his room and became more and more depressed. Necrobutcher said that after living together for a while, Pele and Euronymous got on each other's nerves, with a horrible incident recalled by Hellhammer where Pele went outside to go sleep because Euronymous kept playing music he didn't like, synth music he didn't like. So in return of him leaving, Euronymous grabbed a shotgun and started shooting it in the air while following him, just to antagonize him, just to upset him more. Because why? Because of course he would do that. Varg Vikernes of Burzum, who will show up later in the story, even claimed that Pele had stabbed Euronymous during an altercation. But on the 8th of April 1991, everything would change. Euronymous was locked out the house due to not having a key, so he climbed through a window where he discovered Pele's body. He had unalived himself by using a hunting knife and a shotgun. I'm not going to go into details about how he did it, but he did that. And upon seeing his dead friend's body, not only he didn't call the police, you know what he did? He went to a store where he then bought a disposable camera to take pictures of his bandmate's body, and even using the items of the crime scenes as props. such as the shotgun. And then he called the police. And then he called the police. What? While doing my research, there was also a note that Pele left. I'm not going to read it here. You could probably go find that on your own. Like I said, I'm not going to read it here. You could probably find that on your own. It's pretty depressing. But with Pele's death caused a rift between Euronymous and some of his friends and band members due to the way he acted towards Pele before and after his death. Euronymous used Pele's death to give the band a more evil vibe to make it seem darker, and claimed that Pele unalived himself due to black metal being trendy and commercialized, which is pretty crazy. There were even rumors that Euronymous made stew out of Pele's body, which was ultimately, debunked by the band. They said that never happened, and then they did say it happened actually, so they were lying when they say that. Euronymous is making stew out of Pele's body and used his skull fragments to make necklaces, where he gave to other band members of different bands who he deemed worthy, with many coming out to confirm, like Bard Faust Uthin of Emperor and Metal Lion, the founder of Slayer magazine, having one of these necklaces. Morgan Steinmeier Haxon for Marduk also confirmed this, and that he also owns a piece of Pele's brain, as well as lead from the shot of the incident, all which were gifted him by Euronymous. Necro Butcher promptly ended his friendship with him and left Mayhem. Mannheim has later speculated that Euronymous had willingly left Pele alone in the house so he would have a chance to commit. But here's the crazy part. Varg Vikernes of Burnham or whatever ended up sending shotgun shells to Mayhem as a present, as a Christmas present. But he claimed that those weren't the shotgun shells that Pele used. He yet instead used a special one. For what? Anyways, after the images that Euronymous took were developed by Hellhammer, Euronymous swore to the group that he would destroy the images. He unsurprisingly lied. He then kept them in an envelope in a record shop that he bought in 1991, gave to the owner of War Master Records, and it ended up being used as the cover to a bootleg live album, The Dawn of the Black Hearts. The infamous picture, the infamous album cover picture. I'm not going to add it here because of obvious reason. But with Pele's story mostly being done, we're going to now move on to Euronymous and about his record shop named Helvet, which is also the Swedish word for hell. It became a staple area for new and upcoming artists in the Swedish and Norwegian dark metal genre. There was a basement in the shop where he could invite members from other bands to rehearse and record. He even had his own production company named Death Like Silence Productions, which released albums by Norwegian bands Mayhem and Varg and Swedish bands Merciless and Abruptum. Euronymous, Varg, and Emperor guitarist Thomas Samuth Hugin all lived at Helvet at various times. Emperor drummer Faust also lived and worked there. Helvet ended up becoming an infamous spot for a multitude of bands, with Metal Lion even writing in a slasher that the opening of Helvet was the creation of the whole black metal Norwegian scene, and he wasn't wrong. Many death metal fans who visited the shop ended up switching over and became black metal. Amputation became immortal. Thou Shalt Suffer turned to Emperor, and Dark Throne changed their Swedish-inspired death metal to a more primitive black metal. Varg even left his band at the time, named Old Funeral, to create his own band named Burzum. Euronymous eventually took Varg on as an apprentice, allowing him to play bass for Mayhem and even produce songs for him for Burzum. Now, that seems nice, right? Wrong. Because some crazy stuff ends up happening, such as on June 6, 1992, the Fantov Stave Church was burnt down, and by suspected arson, with the number one culprit being Varg Vikernes, but he was never convicted. So, that's that. Sorry, that's not that. That ended up causing a ripple effect of many other musicians and fans following and also burning churches, with Euronymous even being present at one, the burning of the Holmenkollen Chapel with Varg and Faust. In January 1993, one of Norway's biggest newspapers, Bergens Tidende, brought the black metal music scene to the light because of Varg. Under the pseudonym Count Grishnak, he gave an anonymous interview which he claimed that he burnt the churches and even killed a man in Lillehammer. Varg stated that the interview was planned between him and Euronymous to bring more attention to the black metal music scene and to promote Helvet so it can get some more customers. But before the article could even be published, Varg was arrested, along with some other band members who were picked up for questioning but were all released for lack of evidence, and with Varg also being released in March of 1993 for the same thing. In the British metal magazine Kerrang, they published an article about the Swedish black metal scene where Euronymous and Vikernes presented themselves as leaders of a cult group of satanic terrorists. Euronymous claimed that Helvet helps fund his activities but said he is not directly involved in his crimes because if he were caught, the organization would fall apart. After Bergens Tidende published his paper, Euronymous decided to shut down Helvet because it started to be getting too much attention from the law and media, even though Varg and the authors of Lord of Chaos claimed that Euronymous shut it down due to his parents pressuring him. So I hate to keep dumping all this crazy stuff on you, but it gets more crazy. There's more stuff, okay? Such as on the 10th of August 1993, an argument between Varg and Euronymous ensued, which led to Varg stabbing and unaliving Euronymous in his apartment in Oslo. The newspaper and the media led people to believe that it was a financial dispute due to Euronymous having to owe Varg a large sum of royalties for Burzum, or it was seen as an attempt to undo an incident in Lillehammer. However, with Varg, he claimed that he committed the murder out of self-defense. He said that Euronymous was planning on kidnapping and torturing him to death while he filmed. Varg explained that if he was talking about it to everybody and anybody, I wouldn't have taken it seriously. But he just told a select group of friends, and one of them told me. On the night of the murder, Varg and Snorre Blackthorn Ruch left Bergen to Euronymous' apartment in Oslo. Blackthorn stayed outside to smoke while Varg climbed the stairs to Euronymous' apartment on the 4th floor, where they met at the door so he could give him a signed contract. But when he stepped forward to confront Euronymous, I guess Euronymous is getting spooked or scared, kicked him in the chest. In return, Varg ran to the kitchen to grab a knife, and a fight broke out, which, like I said, led to Varg unaliving Euronymous. Euronymous' body was found in the stairwell of the 1st floor with 23 stab wounds, 2 to the head, 5 to the neck, and 16 to the back. Varg contested that most of Euronymous' wounds were caused by broken glass that he fell on during the struggle, and after the murder, Varg and Blackthorn drove back to Bergens. But wait! They also stopped at a lake so Varg can discard his bloody clothing. Not suspicious at all. Not suspicious at all. Blackthorn even came out and claimed that Varg was actually planning to unalive Euronymous, almost pressuring him to coming along. Blackthorn had been living with Varg due to the fact he was almost admitted to a mental hospital, and he had stated that I was neither for nor against it. I didn't give a shit about Oystein. Varg claims that he did not plan for the murder and that Blackthorn came along to show Euronymous some new guitar riffs. Varg was arrested on August 19th, 1993, and during his trial, it was claimed that Varg, Blackthorn, and another member planned to kill Euronymous, with the other members staying at Varg's apartment as an alibi. He was there to rent videos off of him and even play the videos in his apartment and even make his subtraction from Varg's credit card to look like they were at the apartment the entire time. Varg was sentenced on May 16th, 1994 for 21 years, which is the maximum prison sentence for a murder in Norway, the arson of 3 churches, the attempted arson of a 4th church, and the theft of storage of 150 kilograms of explosives. And now you're like,
explosives? Why was he carrying explosives?
Well, him and Euronymous were actually planning to blow up a church. The church known as the Nisaros Cathedral, and the argument of them leading to Euronymous' death ended up halting that plan. Thankfully, kind of a little blessing in disguise, I guess. But yeah, they tried to blow up that church. That church actually now appears on a album cover from one of the bands. Right here. Blackthorn was also sentenced to 8 years in prison for being an accomplice, and in 2009, Varg was released from prison on parole. I believe he's still out there. I believe he's still making music as well. Here's a picture of him now. I've always liked the story. I've always thought this story was interesting. It's one of my favorite true crime stories. It's just so crazy. It's so crazy. I know when I was doing my research, I guess some doctors try to say that Pele had that condition where he thinks that his body is dead, that he's not alive, his body's like a corpse or something like that.
Cotard syndrome.
But that wasn't able to be like proven true. But like I said, this is one of my favorite topics to talk about. More on the darker side. I like the music, you know. Like I said, this is my second time recording this because I'm a dummy and I didn't record the first time. So it would mean a lot if you would like, subscribe, and comment what would you like to see in the next video. I don't mind doing research. I don't mind doing long research. I'm trying to make videos a little bit longer. But with that being said, I think it's time to end this video. Like I said, please like, comment, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your friends, tell your grandma.
Hey, Grandma.
And I'll see you all in the next video. Bye-bye.
And I want you to make me a Krabby Patty!
Start digging in your butt, twin.
What? What?